The story begins with Danby, a high school senior who is up to his neck in homework. He's just a few days away from taking his college entrance exams, but he has a big little problem. He's terrible at math. The girl freezes up in the middle of class, which makes the teacher lose his patience and call her up to the board. But, as expected, Danby can't get anything right, and the teacher scolds her in front of the whole class, making her look completely ridiculous. When she gets home, instead of getting to work, she ignores her studies and starts playing with her phone. She also listens to music and does anything she can to distract herself. Her mother already has her in her sights and tells her the typical phrase, if she memorized math formulas the way she memorizes song lyrics, she'd be a genius. She even jokes, saying that she must have inherited that empty brain from her father, and that no university will accept her if she keeps this up. But what really makes Danby explode is when her mother changes the channel to watch those boring historical dramas. Fed up with everything, Danby gives up, leaves her room, and goes to seek refuge with her best friend. But she doesn't find comfort there either because her friend reminds her that this is her last chance. If she fails now, she won't have a future or anywhere to go. The next day, Danby wakes up very late, so she has to rush out. It turns out that she had a very important exam that day. Her mother encourages her as she leaves, asking her to do her best. She's very nervous, especially about the math section, and tries to study as much as she can on the bus. When she arrives, she jumps off the bus and runs to the exam. But in her rush, she forgets her umbrella as she approaches the exam building. Panic takes over her. She feels unprepared. Fear paralyzes her, and she starts thinking about running away instead of facing failure. Desperate, she sits down in the rain. Her heart was broken. She didn't want to disappoint her family. That's why she wished with all her heart to simply disappear from the face of the earth. In front of her, there's a shallow puddle formed by the rain. She approaches it, and suddenly something very crazy and at the same time very magical happens. She sees a group of people dressed in very strange clothes, like in the historical dramas her mother liked. They were praying for rain, saying that it hadn't rained in 3 years and that people were dying of thirst. Out of nowhere, Danby falls into the puddle and for some reason starts to drown, but instead of dying, she emerges in the same place, but in a completely different world. Danby is very confused and starts asking if they're filming some kind of historical drama or something like that. The king of that era, seeing her strange behavior, is terrified and yells at her, thinking she's a demon. Nervously, she tells him that she's just a high school student, but the way she says it sounds to them like a black magic spell, which increases their fear. Suddenly, the guards surround her with swords. When Danby realizes the swords are real and this isn't a game, she panics. But to survive, she has to improvise. Since they were asking for rain, Danby starts to pray and asks God for rain. The people repeat her words as if it were a sacred prayer, but at the moment when everyone looks up, she had already vanished. Danby runs out and arrives at a place full of ceremonial clothes. To avoid being noticed, she disguises herself as a eunuch and sneaks in. At the meeting with the king during the assembly, the king announces that they must stop relying on superstitions and start studying science and mathematics in order to save the kingdom. But the high priest, who was a bitter old man, strongly opposes, saying that this is a dangerous nonsense and that mathematics is just another superstition. He claims that the drought is because the heavens are angry, since the king cannot conceive an heir. The only way to bring the rain is for the king to make love to the queen in a sacred ritual. For her part, Danby tries to escape to look for signal with her phone, but the guards catch her again. While she waits for the king to arrive, she thinks that maybe she can escape when it rains. But the king surprises her by telling her that not a single drop of water has fallen in 3 years. And, to top it off, he doesn't like her. The intruder declares that she must be executed immediately. She panics and begs them not to hurt her. She tries to explain to him that she's not from that time, that she comes from the future, and that she ended up there by accident. She tries to convince them that she knows all the history and that she could help them a lot, but when she sees that it's not working, she has no choice but to lie. She tells the king that she is a math teacher. Intrigued, the king postpones the execution and asks her to prove it. Does he give her a problem about the Pythagorean theorem? At first, Danby is more lost than an octopus in a garage. Because remember, she hates math, but when she realizes it's good old Pythagoras, she solves it in the blink of an eye. The king is left speechless since his own scholars take too many days to solve that simple problem. From that moment on, everyone starts treating Danby like a genius, thinking he was a math scholar. Seeing his abilities, the king gives him a mission to teach mathematics to the people. If he succeeds, he will be allowed to return home. But the first student is the king himself. Danby is surprised the king can't even count on his fingers. With a lot of patience, as if his life were at risk, he begins to teach him the basics: addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Eventually, they prepare for a math contest against a musician from a rival city. If Danby loses, obviously things will go very badly for him. She boldly challenges the king and even gets so comfortable with him that in a moment of frustration, she gives him a little smack. Seeing this, the guards come in ready to chop her to pieces. But the king stops them and laughs about it. Of course, every time the queen visits, they have to hide all the math papers and pretend they're talking about something else. One day, the king notices that Danby is hungry and invites her to eat. But she doesn't like the palace food, so he takes her to the kitchen. Using the ingredients from her backpack, he makes her some instant noodles, worthy of the gods themselves. When he tries it, the king is fascinated, although in the future they eat with a lot of spice and the king is not used to that. When she offers him water, he pretends to be brave and tells her he doesn't need it. The next day, the whole palace hears him screaming from stomach pain. When Danby goes to see him, the king has put a talisman on his ear. Thinking that she cast some spell on him, she rolls her eyes and tells him it was just the spicy noodles. There's no black magic or spells behind it. She explains that since he's not used to it, his stomach is more sensitive. Confused, he asks, "What's a stomach?" So Danby takes the opportunity to give him a quick anatomy lesson: stomach, intestines, and the heart. She tells him that if he puts his hand on his chest, he'll feel it beating. He doesn't feel anything, and she smiles, saying that someday he'll be able to when he's with someone he truly loves. The king is amazed by her knowledge and asks her to teach all the scholars not only mathematics, but also science and agriculture. That night, he offers her a tangerine and she thanks him as if he were her friend. The king gets upset and tells her that, as a vagabond, she should learn more about good manners. She laughs and tells him not to be so dramatic over a simple fruit. Later, they go out to play ball. She manages to get the king to run and have fun like a little child. The next day, the king tells his future wife that night, he will take a love potion and then they will get married and consummate their marriage. But fate had other plans, and that love potion ends up in Danby's hands. She starts acting really strange and ends up falling asleep in the palace. When she wakes up, she apologizes over and over, but the king tells her it's okay and that she should just forget about it. Then they go out for a walk. He promises her a high rank and a horse if she succeeds, but she insists as soon as it rains, she'll return to her world. Seeing how brave and bold she is, the king tells her that from now on they are equals. In other words, they'll speak man to man. But the happiness doesn't last long. The next day, Danby is arrested and accused of mocking the king, with a tan ready for torture, but luckily the king intervenes. However, a priest takes advantage of the situation and issues a challenge. He gives her 2 weeks, and if it doesn't rain, then she will be executed. Danby doesn't give up. She studies, calculates, and with the help of the palace musician, builds a rain gauge. Then the miracle happens. The rain begins to fall. Danby is very happy, but the king remembers that she promised to leave when it rained. So he runs to find her and finds her crying. He urges her to escape because a ship waits for her. But she refuses, saying she spent her life running away and only ended up there by fleeing her world. At that moment, the musician arrives, who secretly works with the high priest. The priest had ordered to get rid of the scholar, believing that Danby was dangerous. But instead of killing her, the musician puts her on a horse and brings her to safety. There he confesses to her that he already knows she is a girl. But he is a decent man. That's why he couldn't kill her. So she doesn't feel bad. He tells her that her secret is safe with him. Meanwhile, in the palace, the high priest tries to convince the king to destroy everything Danby had taught, especially the new written language. But the king doesn't accept it, and instead, he goes out to look for her in the forest. The guards catch up to Danby and the musician. He stays behind to fight so she can escape until the queen herself appears. Her feet are bleeding. After running so much to help them, Danby keeps running until she can't go any further. Then she remembers that the king told her the sun is Joseon's clock, so she follows the light to the sea. And there, our king was already waiting for her that night. They sit down to watch the stars. She tells him that in the future you can hardly see the stars. Only the brightest ones can be seen. He replies with a very good phrase, "The only stars you can see are the stars you choose to see. The eyes only see what the heart wants." After that magical moment, the king confesses that he loves her and tells her that he wants to create an easy language for his people. She remembers something, takes out a bill from the future, and sees the king's face printed on it. It's King Joseon himself. That's when she realizes that his plan would succeed. When he returns, the king announces salaries for those serving the people. The priest surprisingly agrees. but he still wants to get rid of Danby. Even so, she continues teaching the king in secret. One day, Danby finds the queen eating and hiding because she was strictly forbidden to gain weight, which she thought was unfair. She offers her instant noodles and becomes her friend. The queen discovers that Danby is a woman and informs the queen mother so that she can make her a concubine. Suddenly, they start putting makeup on Danby and dressing her up. She doesn't understand anything until she finally realizes they are preparing her to spend the night with the king. When she finds out about this, she panics and runs away. The king goes out to look for her, and when he finds her, he takes her into a room. Danby screams that she's only 19 years old and that they're just friends. The king laughs and tells her that being 19 here already means being an adult. Besides, he had already realized long before that she was a woman. But even so, he asks her to cooperate because his mother is very stubborn. The next morning, the musician asks her if she's sure about going back to the future. Danby isn't so sure anymore. They bring her to the queen mother, who looks exactly like her future mother. Seeing this, Danby begins to cry uncontrollably. That night, the king shows her the new astronomical system and the new Korean alphabet he created so that the people can write and communicate more easily. Then he puts a royal hairpin on her and proposes to her. But Danby, with a broken heart, says no because she promised to return to her mother. The king, hurt and angry, tells her to leave if she prefers the future so much, then storms off in fury. Danby is left alone, but suddenly someone hits her and stabs her. Not satisfied with that, they set the building on fire. When the king finds out, he risks his life and goes into the flames to save her. The next day, he accuses the high priest of trying to kill her and steal the ancient text. It turns out that the math book in Danby's backpack stopped the stabbing, meaning that Pythagoras saved her life. The king confronts the priest, who admits that he did it because the new language will bring chaos and the freedom of thought for the young will only corrupt them. The king replies that he prefers a future where people can dream. The priest, defeated, asks to be executed. Soon the sky clouds over and it starts to rain again. Danby says goodbye to everyone, and the king accompanies her to the seashore. There, Danby steps into the same puddle and lets herself sink. Moments later, she appears in her own world, but only a few seconds have passed there, so she runs to her exam and manages to get in on time. Later, she returns home and hugs her mother with all her strength. Danby has changed. Now she values everything she has much more. Months go by, and one day, as she's leaving school, it starts to rain. Suddenly, someone puts an umbrella over her. She looks up and sees a familiar face. He looks exactly like King Joseon, but he's just a regular guy who smiles at her and says they've met before on the bus. A while ago, since she dropped her umbrella, he had been looking for her to return it, but I say he's the King of Joseon, and that he jumped into the puddle to find her. That's how this short story ends. If you liked it, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. See you in the next story.